She got married, suffered a miscarriage, but later welcomed her first child into the world. But after a difficult journey in which she suffered mental, emotional, and even physical abuse, she ended up in depression and decided to leave. So she returned to the United Kingdom, this time to Scotland. She arrived living on government benefits, or here in the US, welfare. By all accounts at that point, through many mistakes and through many failures and lots of adversity, things weren't really going well for a young woman who had so much promise, but she still had a great idea. So she began to start writing. She didn't work, she was just scrounging dollars and doing anything she could to put money on the table for her young daughter just to survive. So she started frequenting coffee shops, cafes, restaurants, and bars in Edinburgh, Scotland. And she began to start writing her first book. So she wrote several chapters, decided to reach out to a few literary agents, but none were interested. A few more months went by, and in that time she finally found a taker, Christopher Little Literary Agents. They were willing to give her a shot. It would take sending to 12 different publishers, none of which would accept her first work. She finally, after 18 months, found a taker, Bloomsbury Publishing. Probably the best decision Bloomsbury Publishing has ever made. 400 million copies of books later, including the greatest best-selling literary series in history. I think it's safe to say that no one could call J.K. Rowling a failure. So the next time, even if it's your first time, that you're picking up a Harry Potter book and reading about Dumbledore and Quidditch, remember the woman's name at the bottom of your book, because everything in her life truly came from her greatest mistakes, failures, unbelievable adversity of every kind. I started out with that incredible story, not just because I'm an author, but because it's truly one of the most amazing stories that I've ever encountered. And it's led me to believe, as I've looked across my life and at the lives of many successful people, friends, family, coworkers, people that I've coached and consulted over the years, that in life, so much of our best personal growth and professional growth really does come from the mistakes that we make and the adversity that we encounter of all kinds. So the goal here today is to really explain that and give you a 360-degree view of all of the different kinds of adversity, failures, and mistakes, and to share some stories and examples of some other people who have undergone similar circumstances. So there's 3 points that I'd like you to remember as I walk away from the speech here today. Every difficulty, adversity, and mistake and failure can truly be converted into an incredible opportunity of growth. By building your foundation on core values and then putting together a game plan, you're truly best suited to surpass and overcome anything that stands in your way. And last but not least, as cliche as it may sound, keep going is probably the best advice that I've ever been given or would ever give to anybody else. It's about perseverance and to continue to keep going in the face of anything that gets in your way. I share this quote here from Richard Branson, and I think as we would go around the room, I'm sure many people probably wouldn't be looking at Richard Branson's venture into Virgin Cola, or maybe even his work in the cinemas. But in fact, we know him today as a man who's amassed over a $5 billion fortune, but more importantly, just one of the most successful business leaders in the world. We know him more by Virgin Records, Virgin Airlines, and his other business ventures. And in the quote here, he talks about how so much of the foundation on which he built his life, so much of why he's succeeded in business has come because he's failed, because he's been willing to come back the next time and give things an opportunity. So I wanted to highlight a few different values that I feel like are very important to support the point here. Enthusiasm. First and foremost, you have to have a passion for what you do. You have to be passionate either about the work you're doing every day, from the satisfaction that you get from spending time with your family, from pursuing that side hustle or personal ambition on the side. Enthusiasm is vitally important to continuing forward, whether you're succeeding or whether you're failing. Quick story here about a man that you might be familiar with, one of the greatest business leaders in American history and in world history. So when Steve Jobs teamed up with Steve Wozniak to found Apple Computers in 1976, he became the marketing mind and the business mind for what became one of the world's most successful companies. But it's important to remember that everything didn't just work out perfectly for Steve Jobs. If you don't know the story, it's well worth looking into. Less than 10 years after he founded Apple Computers, he resigned from the company. They basically forced him out in a power play and more or less fired him from the position that he was in and from the company that he founded. So he got kicked on his butt, he got right back up, and he founded another company called Next. And over the course of the next 10 years, he built up that company and then later sold it back to Apple in 1997 for over $400 million. And part of that deal was that Apple actually decided to bring him back and to have him lead the company. And so the devices that many of you are holding here in your hand today were born from a man that refused to give up. And to think about how unbelievable that is, that the company that he founded saw it fit to actually ask him to leave less than 10 years later. But he knew he had something to do and he had to come back and build it back and continue the vision that he had started. We talk about optimism, and I wanted to read this quote from the New York Times bestseller, The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. Research shows that when people work with a positive mindset, performance on nearly every level improves. So not just having a passion and having an enthusiasm for what you do, but staying positive. And not all of us can always stay positive in the face of every adversity, but it's the long game, it's not the short game. I think every one of us can agree that we're going to have a bad day. And there are going to be things. I have a 3-year-old son at home, and believe me, I don't always have a smile on my face. My voice is a little more hoarse these days. I'm doing my best to not yell, but maintaining optimism and a positive attitude, playing that long game and seeing it through, truly every area of our life improves when we keep things positive. Speaking of which, I've also coached high school basketball, and my very first year in coaching, we won 1 game. Believe me, it wasn't easy to stay positive. But what I decided to do, and I learned in that moment of what I needed to do, given that we weren't going to win too many games, I decided to take a lesson from every single game. And the next day when I spoke to the kids and I spoke to the other folks on the coaching staff, I kept looking at what we were doing and how we could improve every day incrementally. I knew that while we weren't going to win a state championship, and heck, we weren't even going to make it to the 3-win mark, there was room to grow. I learned in that season that the camaraderie of being around a team of people was incredibly special. I learned that it was far more about not just wins and losses, but about what we were learning and what I was teaching a bunch of young men, and that the greatest value that I would receive from coaching that season was truly what I would be able to give to them and what I would receive back in the form of gratitude, in the form of thank you, in the form of, you're helping me to learn, coach, you're helping me to grow. So I share that story because it was an incredible foray into the world of basketball coaching, which is one of my greatest passions. I played at the college level. It's something that I have a great subject matter knowledge in. And yet, an immediate bump on the way didn't deter me from continuing on that path of coaching more and then ultimately going on to other teams that would go on to win county championships and other division titles. So even that first adversity that you encounter should always be a reminder that you should keep going. Talk about confidence. Obviously a correlation there with faith, with optimism, with enthusiasm, with approaching everything that we do with confidence. Incredible study from a Harvard Business Review article talked about how Harvard scientists combined research with looking at the Israeli military. And what these studies were able to show was that when people truly learn the most, and when people were able to look back at their successes and failures and the whole distillation of everything that they had done, they actually learned more from when they failed. They were able to go back and look and say, this time we didn't succeed, but we learned and now we know how to get better. You learn from both successes and you learn from failures, but either way, what this study showed is that an event review after what you do every day, and that could come in the form of a daily journal or a weekly journal or even getting feedback from people who love and care about you. It could be the mental journal of the voice that you play back to yourself in your mind, of looking back and saying, how can I build confidence? How can I keep either succeeding, or how can I take this mistake or failure and grow from it? Hard work, another saying that I learned in the world of coaching, is that there are two things in life that you can always control: your attitude and your effort. And so there's never an excuse for not working hard. There's never an excuse for not, giving your absolute best effort. And I try to remind myself of that every day, again with my 3-year-old son, in my job, and in what I'm doing on the side as a writer, as an author, and in the work that I do. So I ask you, think about that question yourself. Are you truly immersing yourself mentally, emotionally? Are you truly investing in everything that you do? Are you working hard and maximizing your output in all that you do, from the mundane tasks to the things that really may not spark that fire in you and interest you, to the things that you love and are passionate about? Again, maybe that time with your family, or it could be that boat trip that you take on the weekend. Work hard. I wanted to share this because I knew it would resonate, as it has in my life, and as well with probably many of the folks here in the room. The topic of tragedy. And so a few years ago, as many of you are all too well aware, many people in this city were victims of gun violence in the summer of 2015. And while tragic and awful, I was also able to witness from a distance at the time, when I wasn't yet living here, just how much this community and how much this city pulled together. And being here over the past year, it's been incredible to see, in the face of an unthinkable tragedy, just how much people have come together and have grown, and that a community has gotten stronger. I grew up outside of New York City, and over 50 people in my hometown were killed on 9/11 when the Twin Towers fell. Firefighters, policemen, stockbrokers. They did not discriminate over rich and poor. Many people lost their lives that day. And in my hometown, people decided to not take that as something to sulk about and just get sad about. While the lives could never be replaced, the community, again, just like here in Charleston and in this greater area, came together. People grew. People started talking with each other a little bit more and got to know each other better. And through that love and through that faith, they kept building and kept growing. With perseverance, I use this slogan here because I think it actually used to be at the gym that I went to. And it's so true. Know that showing up is half the battle. That just getting there and willing yourself to be there will often lead to unbelievable opportunities. Keep going. And again, I started that off in the beginning of this conversation because someone asked me one time, what is the best advice that you've ever been given? And I said, I don't know if it's so much advice as much as it is a positive motivation to keep going. And I think that that's so important in the face of mistakes and failures and things like that that we're going to encounter in life. Never think that this one thing that might happen is going to set you back. Keep going and keep moving forward. And I use the concept of compound interest because with each day that you find that there's an adversity that sets you back, that there's something in your life that's nagging at you, leading you to believe that you're not going to be able to keep moving forward. Think of the concept of compound interest, which most people would know from the world of finance. Every day that you give your absolute best, that you live with positivity, you live with enthusiasm, and you live confidently with faith. Every single day, you're building up that interest. You're building up that accrued principal and interest. And you're going to keep getting better, and you're going to keep moving forward. Quote here from another unbelievable business mind of Elon Musk. If something is important enough, you should go try, even if you think that the probable outcome, not just the possible outcome, the probable outcome is failure. Be willing to give things a shot. Conclude with faith. And for me, faith is 3 ways. For me, it's a belief in God. It's a belief in a higher power, which I draw so much strength from in my life. But what I've learned about faith is that it's not just thought of in the religious context. And I encourage you, I implore you to not just think of faith in a religious context. Think about it as the faith that you have in yourself. It starts with faith. That thought, that idea that comes into your mind, you back it with a desire and a passion. But you build your foundation and your value structure on faith. You have to first believe in what you're doing. You have to believe in yourself and believe in the other people around you. You'll start earning more friends that way, and you'll start building better relationships that way. So live with faith. And in conclusion, I use a quote by one of the greatest athletes I think the world has ever seen, certainly the best that I have. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. And again, I use Michael Jordan as an example because I started earlier with Richard Branson and Steve Jobs and some of the most successful people by any account that any of us would know. And I don't think anyone would ever say that Michael Jordan was a failure in all that he's done, as a player especially. But the reason in every interview that he points to as to why he has succeeded is because he failed. Because he worked hard and he had a passion for what he did, and he was unwilling to let any setback hold him back. Thank you very much for your time. I heard one of the speakers earlier use gratitude, and I truly humbled to come here and extremely grateful to BV, to everyone for the opportunity to come and speak with you. It seems like a really special group of people, and I'm glad that you welcomed me into your meeting, so thank you very much.